Raise your hand if you are bad at asking for help. Y'all, I am bad at this, okay? We are going to go through this together today on how to be better at asking for help and how to do it well, but I'm telling you right now, this is something I've had to work on. I am an only child, I am single, I live alone. I am hyper independent at this point. I'm a little too self-reliant. So this is something I have personally been working on over the last couple of years and will continue to work on. So if you raise your hand, just know you are not alone, but we are going to get better at making asks today. Welcome to the Creating Opportunities podcast. This is the place where we help professionals build authentic relationships to create success in all areas of their lives. And that is because people matter. They're messy, but they matter. And so I am your host, Cassandra Thompson. I am a speaker, a trainer, a coach, an iced coffee lover, and I am here to help you make deeper connections and deeper relationships. So let's get into it. So if you are like me and you have a hard time asking for help, the number one thing that we have to do is remember, people like to help. People like to help other people. Now, there is a way to frame your ask that we'll get to in a couple of minutes that will make it easier for people to say yes, but I have to remind myself of this fact all the time. I feel terrible even asking a friend like, hey, my car's in the shop, could you pick me up and take me there? Like, even that's hard for me. But yet, if someone messages me and says, hey, I really need this favor, could you help me out? You know, I am so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, they thought of me. Oh my gosh, they want my help. So number one, we got to remember people want to help you. And interestingly, research has shown that asking someone for help and giving help actually brings you closer together. So in terms of the professional sphere, when you're asking a colleague or someone in your network for help, you're actually deepening that relationship. And that's something we're always trying to do. We don't want surface level networking relationships, right? Again, not everyone has to be over here being your best friend, but we don't want everyone to be over here with like, I met them once at a party or a conference and I never talked to them again. So asking someone for help brings you a step closer. And one of the reasons we don't ask for help is because of self-reliance. Guilty as charged, right? I already brought it up. So one tip I have for you, if this is the reason you don't ask for help, start telling people, give them permission to tell you where they can help. So it's going to depend on who it is, how you do this. But for example, when I worked at a college, I had interns. And one of the things I would tell them when we were first getting to meet and get to know each other was, I would say, I'm pretty self-reliant and I'm used to doing these things all by myself. So sometimes while I'm trying to see where you can fit in, I'm not good at thinking through and seeing where you could help. So if you see a place where you can help, if you see something that you go, hey Cassandra, I can make that check-in sheet, or hey Cassandra, I can set that Google Calendar appointment or make that flyer or whatever, let me know. I'm happy to have the help. I'm just not good at seeing those spaces. So that's just one thing that has worked for me to start recognizing where help can be given is by asking people, giving them permission to insert themselves, essentially. Okay, so self-reliance is one reason people don't ask for help, but interestingly, the big reason why people don't ask for help in the professional settings is the perceived social cost. So this is the feeling of, I don't want to look dumb, I don't want to look incapable, so I'm not gonna ask. And I'll admit, there is a fine line to asking for help when the whole world seems Googleable, but you should ask. Again, research is showing that those people who do ask for help, who do ask questions and ask for input, they're actually seen as more confident. But the key is that it has to be an intelligent request. So what is an intelligent request? Well, that is something where you can show, hey, I've done the research, but now I want your input. So it's emailing somebody and saying, hey, I looked on, in fact, wait, I did this yesterday. I am having router issues, okay? There are, my Ring security goes online, offline all day long. I'm just having problems with my internet, my Wi-Fi, and what I read online said it's your router, but no one could give a strong answer to how to solve the problem. So I have a friend, he is the techie guy here on YouTube, and I messaged him and said, hey, I'm having these massive I'm having this massive internet issue, and I think it's my router, but I've looked online and everywhere I've researched, no one has a solution. Gave him a little bit of the problem and said, do you think it's my router? Do I need a new router? And he wrote me back and gave me some great advice. So I showed him, hey, I've done my research, but I want to hear from the expert. That's you. What do you think? So that's an intelligent request. Show that you've done your due diligence before making the ask. Okay, so asking someone for something is both an art and a science, and it's key to remember that every relationship is different. There are certain people that you can ask things of very quickly. There are other people that you're going to have to build that relationship a lot further before you make an ask. But there are guidelines of how to ask, and we're gonna get into like those step-by-step guidelines in a minute. But the overall guideline to keep in mind is to adapt to the communication style and media style of the intended audience. So if it's somebody that you have a very professional relationship with and you do everything over email, you're not gonna call them up for an ask, or you're not going to DM them, right, on Instagram. You're going to email them about your ask. But I have certain people in my life that are part of my network that we only Instagram DM. Like, I have their number. I could text them, but it's just easier for us to contain our relationship on Instagram. So if I need to make them an ask, I'm not text messaging them, I'm Instagram DMing them. This does remind me of the clip from He's Just Not That Into You, where Drew Barrymore is like, so he put, which it's a dated clip now, because he's like, he messaged me on MySpace and then I poked him on Facebook and then he sent me a text message, and it goes through like all the different platforms and how exhausting it is. And if I wasn't gonna get some sort of like copyright strike, I would insert it here. It's very much like that, but that's why you don't want to be going chasing the rabbit all around. You're going to focus on whatever medium is most comfortable to them. Now, another guideline to remember to make an ask well is to be considerate about when you ask. Now, we don't have full control over this depending on who we're talking to, but let's say you have to ask your manager for something. Well, be smart about when you make that ask. Don't do it right after a very frustrating meeting, right? Think through, is this a time where they're going to be able to have some consideration and thoughtfully listen to my ask? And again, also keep in mind the timing of the relationship. I have people that I have met at an event, and then we get on a Zoom, and it's just a very natural place for us to make an ask of one or the other, right? Or both, and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. If you know anyone who fits this, please let me know. Or, hey, I'm looking for any recommendations on this thing. Could you help me out? There are other people I've met that they're maybe at a higher level or maybe have more clout in some way. I'm going to wait and save my ask for a really important time. I'm not going to message them and go, hey, you have any recommendations on a book I should read? Like, they're not going to get the simple ask. I'm going to nurture that relationship and wait for when I really need to make an ask. And so that's why this is art and science, but it's definitely more art. As I was doing research on this topic, one thing I found really interesting is do not start your ask with an apology. You need to be direct and authentic. So you don't want to go, hey, I'm so sorry to ask this of you, but could you maybe, I'm so sorry, I know you're busy. No, just be direct and say, hey, there's this thing I'm looking for. I thought of you. Here's the ask. Along with being direct and authentic, you also want to make it what's called a smart ask. Now, we're going to get into that a little bit more in a second, but before we get in that smart part, I just want to address the fact that there will be rejection. There will be ghosting. Now, if somebody doesn't respond to your ask at all, don't be afraid to follow up. There's a whole other video on follow-up. I'll put it right here. Don't be afraid to follow up. Things get lost in email, text message. I mean, hi, how many of us have read a text message in line at the grocery store and we don't respond then, and then we completely forget about it? So don't be afraid to follow up. But let's say you also get a rejection. They say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do you that favor in some way. Well, accept the rejection gracefully, thank you so much for your response, and then think through what can you learn from it and what can you change to get a yes the next time. So the rejection will leave clues. What do they say that lets you know, maybe I made too big an ask, or, oh, maybe they need more information before being able to do that thing. Let me add some more context next time. Just look for the clues in the rejection so that you can make better asks in the future. But I need to let you know that this one is sponsored by my one-on-one coaching program, Authentically Grow Your Business with LinkedIn. Are you tired of wasting time on social media posts with minimal results? You can say goodbye to endless scrolling and hello to a strategic approach that gets you noticed by the right people. Authentically Grow Your Business with LinkedIn is the one-on-one coaching program designed to turn your LinkedIn profile into a lead-generating powerhouse. This personalized coaching experience is tailored and customized to you to elevate your online reputation and attract high-value clients. In just 4 sessions, you'll master the art of LinkedIn, from profile optimization to targeted audience building and engaging content creation. No more cringeworthy dance videos or generic sales pitches, just genuine connections and tangible results. If you're ready to unlock the full potential of LinkedIn and take your business to new heights, go to my website, cassthompson.com/LinkedIn to learn more. I only take 5 new clients a month, so don't miss out on this opportunity to invest in your success and join the ranks of industry leaders dominating in the LinkedIn landscape. So sign up now and let's start growing your business together on LinkedIn. And here's another interesting thing we need to talk about when making an ask is you never want to waste an opportunity where you could ask. Now, I've talked about this in other episodes and also on my other channel, Cass Thompson Career Advice, that when you're networking, when you do a one-on-one, often there is a point where someone will say, well, how can I help you? What are you looking for? What do you need? And early in my career, I would be very unprepared for that question, and then I would be missing this opportunity. And it's kind of a funny thing, right? It kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that I would be entering into those conversations looking for ways I can help, but I would never think about being on the receiving end of that question. And so before any opportunity, you want to be thinking about, what are my asks? But again, we want to be really smart in figuring out what we actually need and then how to ask for it properly. And so you always want to keep kind of the things you need help with top of mind. And so there is this thing called the Quick Start Method of Ask by Wayne Baker. It's from his book, All You Have to Do Is Ask. It's been a great resource for this video. I highly recommend reading it, and I'll put it in the description box below. But here's how the Quick Start Guide for Asks goes. Literally journal these things out. I am currently working on blank, and I could use help to blank, right? So that's one. One of my urgent tasks is to blank, and I need to blank. I am struggling to blank, and I could benefit from blank. And so those are kind of current issues. Then he moves to bigger vision, life things by going through. One of my biggest challenges in my life is to blank, and I need advice on blank. This is a good point to remember that asks can be professional or they can be personal. So one of my biggest challenges in my life is to balance my work life and time with children, right? And I need advice on how to do that well, and I want to talk to other parents, right? That could be a version of that one. Now the last one is, my biggest hope is to blank, and I need blank. Now, I recommend taking like 15 minutes and figuring this out for yourself, and then put this on an index card that you keep with you, or put it in the notes app on your phone. Have this with you. This will evolve over time. So when you're doing your monthly goal setting or monthly review, you might want to add this to the discussion to see, oh, are these still my asks? And if not, what else do I need help with? You also might figure out that you kind of have 3 different asks for one of these quick start options, depending on who you're talking to. Like my business friends and colleagues, I might have a different ask than one of my YouTube friends, or if I was meeting with somebody in my audience, right? Like I might have different asks. So it's just helpful to start figuring out, what is it I really need? Because again, some of us don't even recognize what we need until we do an activity like this. So thank you to Dr. Baker for coming up with this system. It's super simple. So now that we know what we want to ask, let's frame it in his SMART method to make that ask one that gets results, to make sure we frame our ask well. Now, you might have heard of SMART goals. This is a bit of an adaptation on that, but there's a couple of tweaks to it. So we're gonna go through it one by one. Well, no, we're not, just kidding. I'm gonna give you the overview and then we'll go through it a little bit deeper on some of the tweaks. So S is for specific. M is for measurable, which he says is meaning that what's its importance, or excuse me, why is it important? People often assume others know the importance, but they don't. We're gonna come back to that. And then A is that it's action oriented. So you're giving them, this is the thing I need you to do for me, but saying it a lot more diplomatically than that. R is realistic, but think about it. In this case, realistic is dependent on the person you're asking. So if I said, I want to meet the President of the United States, could you introduce me? Well, if I'm asking my best friend, that's not realistic. If I'm asking my state senator, I don't know, there's more of a chance, right? So realistic, dependent on the person you're asking. And then T is time bound. Always give a due date. If we just make a generic ask and we don't say, hey, if you could let me know in the next couple of days, or I have a deadline of a certain date that I need to hear by, people aren't going to respond. So make it time bound. The piece of this acronym that I found really interesting was that measurable part. That measurable was about the why is this important? So when it's saying measurable, it's kind of the idea of giving context to it. But you have to make the ask compelling by giving them the why. And here's what's really interesting about it. The why could be anything, but you want to have a because in there, and that makes it more compelling. So there were studies done, actual studies done on this, that if somebody just asked someone for something, they wouldn't get as great of responses as if they gave a why. Now, sometimes the why would be something really compelling, and sometimes the why would be something like, because I need to know this information. It's that's kind of non-existent why, but because they said because, it mattered and they got more responses. Crazy, right? So think about it like this. If I said, hey, I would really appreciate it if you introduced me to Chris. You're like, okay, but why? Now, what if I said, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you introduced me to Chris because he has an opening in his department and I think I'm a really good fit for it. Now you're like, okay, I get why I'm introducing you to Chris. But I could also say this, hey, I'd really like it if you'd introduce me to Chris because a lot of people have just said he's a good person to know. That's not really a great compelling reason, but it is a reason. Now, if you're too afraid to start with a professional ask from someone, it's totally fine to start with a personal ask. And in all honesty, sometimes I'd rather do the personal ask than the professional one. So this could be something really simple like, hey, it's on my goals for the new year to start reading more, and I know you're a voracious reader. Could you tell me 1 to 3 books that you've really enjoyed and would recommend? Great. Right? That's an easy ask. Now, I didn't make it time bound, but I did give you my because, right? Measurable. I've got this goal for the year. So you can start with something like that. Again, remember that asking at all deepens relationships. So even these sort of simpler, more personal asks, not professional, still deepen your relationship and create more of a bond. Now, one thing I have found with asks, both that I've given and that I've received, is if you feel gross about asking someone for something, it's probably that you haven't put enough care into the relationship yet. You haven't earned the right to make the ask. So always make sure that you are keeping in touch with people, that you're following up so that when you do need to make an ask of them, it doesn't come out of nowhere and you don't look like a user. You know, I always say if you feel gross asking for something, if you feel like a user in your networking, you're being a user. That's why you feel that way. So make sure that you are following up with people and giving care to them more than just making asks and being a taker. Now, if you need more help on how to follow up and ways to follow up, I have an entirely different episode about it. It came out last week if you're watching this in real time, but I will put it right here in the video and it'll be in the show notes if you're just listening to this podcast. So go check that out next because these two concepts really go hand in hand. And What is the best ask you've ever made? Put it in the comments below. I would love to know. This could be like, I asked at Starbucks for a free coffee. Fun fact, story for another day, I once asked for a job and got it. That was cool. So let me know about those in the comments, but go watch How to Follow Up next, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.